And in those gardens, we practice the 3 ethical principles of permaculture. Maybe you've heard of these, so I'm not really going to dive into what permaculture is. I just want to touch upon the ethical principles, which are earth care, people care, and fair share. Earth care, as you know, is really caring for the soil and all that lives upon it and in it. People care is that collaborative, cooperative, compassionate care we give to one another, and we build resilient communities based upon that. And then fair share is setting our own limits and redistributing surplus so that all, not just humans, but all have what they need in order to live. And so those are those 3 guiding principles of permaculture. And then there are 12 design principles, and maybe you've read those, heard about those, explored them. And again, I'm not really going to talk about these, but as I do talk about what we've done on our campus, I think if you remember some of these, and I'll try and point them out, when I talk about some things. These are the 12 design principles of permaculture. When one is looking to create a landscape, a landscape that mimics nature and works with nature as opposed to against nature, against earth. So observe and interact, catch and store energy. I apologize for that misspelling. Obtain a yield, apply self-regulation and accept feedback, use and value renewable resources and produce no waste. Design from patterns to detail, integrate rather than segregate, use small and slow solutions, use and value diversity, use edges and value the marginal, and creatively use and respond to change. So again, those are the 12 principles upon which permaculture is based. The very first one, the one observe and interact, I found in my early years, even to this day, is the one where I really have to pay attention. And that's it's observing with all your senses, your skin, your eyes, your ears, your sense of smell, touch, in order to understand your place and where you are, because every location is different. And so for me, that's the one that if I were to say to anyone, if you were to find yourself somewhere and you want to live there, to observe and interact is a life journey as far as I'm concerned. So having made that decision to take 7 acres and really try to reshape practices and behaviors, the first thing we had to do was change our landscape for the good of all. And you'll see on the left here, you can see that much of that 7 acres was land that was covered by asphalt and by hard, impervious systems, materials. So asphalt, cement, concrete. The rest of it was what I would call obsessively mowed lawns. So constantly lawns that had heavy equipment mowing it to the perfect looking lawn you could ever have. All of that over, you have to imagine 80 years, 60 years, 50 years, creating, when we removed the asphalt, the soil underneath was terribly degraded. All life had gone out of it. But we have, over the last 10 years, the picture on the right side, we have converted that into lush pollinator gardens, vegetable gardens to supply our kitchen, and a welcoming landscape for all. We've also, one of the things we did 25 years ago was we ceased using any type of chemical or synthetic fertilizers or herbicides. In fact, we have You know, when you mow your lawn a lot of people in the Midwest do that to get rid of dandelions. Well, we've grown to love the dandelions when they appear as the first food of spring. So the other thing we have also done is on that 100 acres, we used to mow probably about 50 of that 50 acres. We now only mow about 25 acres. So we significantly reduced any of our mowing to assist the land in just being herself. And by doing all that, by making all those changes, we have found that we have many new neighbors. The campus is rich in biodiversity at this point. Grasshoppers are back, praying mantis is back, the monarchs have found a home, dragonflies are back. And every year what we notice, our sisters do a lot of bird watching. Most of our sisters who are retired live here, and they do a lot of bird watching, and they will tell me they have noticed significant increase in the different birds that come on the campus and in the bird song. They pay attention to what they're hearing as well. So all of that speaks to our intent to really seek balance, reciprocity on Earth, and the simplicity with Earth. And in this photo, you'll see on the left, those are our sisters who are reseeding an area that's 7 acres with native prairie grasses. So 10 years ago, that would have been that perfectly mowed lawn. We prepared that area and we seeded it with native grasses, native flowers. And so now what you see is a typical area that is just very lush with different growth. The other thing we do that building soil health is a primary goal for us. As I said, the land on which we had uncovered from the asphalt was pretty degraded. It was what you might call dirt, which is soil that's lifeless. And these pictures here, we do a lot now with composting, with vermicomposting and our worms, in order to produce an incredible rich compost that goes back onto the land. So we've tried to create behaviors, which is composting, that benefit the land. So every decision really orients us to what do we need to do in order to keep building soil health. And the sisters, they love the worms. In their mind, the worms are what they call our coworkers. So we have 2 worm bins. Each one has about, you can actually count the worms in a fashion. Each one has about 250 to 300,000 worms that take care of our pre-consumer food waste. We also compost using windrow systems as well on campus. The other priority for us is supporting native ecosystems and biodiversities. So every year we increase the number of perennials we plant, decrease the annuals that we plant in order to create a rich perennial and native plant system. We look to see there's 2 plant systems we've identified that for us we are trying to slowly remove from the area. They're non-natives and they're very aggressive. So in order for us to be successful in prairie and native landscape restoration, we need to somehow address those 2 plants. Some of the practices that help us to do this would be, we have goats that come onto campus a couple of times a year. We do controlled burns. We use the process of sheet mulching. Sheet mulching is a wonderful process. However, if you go back to those principles, we had a lot of failure at the beginning based on what we were doing. So we really had to, accept some feedback, go back, rectify our mistakes. But it's a great way to suppress an area and build soil health. With the cardboard, with the layer of mulch, oftentimes leaf mulch, castings that we use. And then also using what we call a process for hugel mounds, which is a building of a mounded area using the materials on site, branches, twigs, leaves, to create a mound that then becomes very rich soil and holds a lot of moisture for planting. One of the other things that I find this to be probably one of our most successful efforts is really trying to attend to water's story. So the first thing, like most campuses that are quite large, maybe schools, you're familiar with campuses of schools, any kind of place, malls, any developed area. And if you look at the photo again of our campus on the left, you see a lot of buildings, you'll see a lot of paved roads, and you'll see a lot of flat mode surfaces. So we did several rain walks when it would rain to see what happened to water on our campus when the rains came. And of course, what happened was, because it was a traditional stormwater management system, rain was directed right into the storm drains that then were taken quickly off campus, filled with pollutions from the roofs, from the roads, picking up all kinds of litter and having no capacity for natural filtration to happen. So our goal, as we watched this, was to find ways to allow the rain to spread out, slow down, and sink in. So the way we accomplished that was by beginning to do some earthworks. So up in the top left there, that area is a series of berms and swales, higher areas with lower areas. It used to be totally flat, but we went back to the original contour of that area and built up the berms and swales so water in that area could be captured and allowed to sink down into the groundwater where it can be filtered naturally rather than being shot into the storm drain. On the left bottom side, we in the same swale area, this was one of those storm drains, but we put a collar on it that's about 4 feet high. So water, when it rained, would not be able to go into that storm drain until it became that high in the swale. And so again, it's a way of slowing the water down, spreading it out, and allowing it to sink in. The other process we use was we have begun installing rain gardens on campus. And so you'll see one of our rain gardens on the right upper corner there. And the rain gardens, this is a rain garden that was being built by our intern. We did an intern program, couple-year program, before COVID happened. During COVID, we had to close down the campus, but these are students from our 2 universities who came, learned about rain gardens, how to build them, design them, make decisions about what plants you would put in. And so it really was, this is the gardens that they installed for this one section of our campus. And this is what a couple months later, I think they installed that rain garden in June, and this would have been in September. As you can see, a lot of growth happened, and this was after one of the rainfall where the rain gardens were able to capture the water. And the nice thing about rain gardens is they're far more beautiful than a mowed lawn. So if only to do it for aesthetics purposes, it's worth it. But it certainly is worth it in order to capture the rain and allow the rain to stay on the land. The other thing we do is we have installed rain barrels around the campus in order to capture rainfall from our roofs. And we use that water for irrigation. So by just changing our stormwater management through berms and swales, through rain gardens, and through the capturing of on rain barrels, we have been able to, for the last 3 to 4 years, we have never had to use city water for any of our irrigation. We use the natural rains that are also recharging our groundwater system. This is an area, I think, for us in our town, because our town has not adopted the installation of rain gardens. I think it's something that we continually are promoting for use throughout the city, the use of rain gardens. Another project that we've done is we have a very small wetland area that also had suffered some degradation, and so we have just completed the wetland restoration. This is actually a stormwater pond management system. So it's not a natural pond, but it's one that was built to collect stormwater, and we've done some work on it and in the area in order to restore the pond, restore the native life around the pond so that it can be more incorporated into a healthy way into our campus. Just a few other examples of our sustainability efforts. We made a commitment in 2016 to decrease our energy by 2022, our energy use by 30%. Right now, we've decreased it by 28%. So we still have a little ways to go, but we've done that through window replacements, highly efficient new mechanical systems that when we need them. The system on the left is a chiller, water tank chiller for our buildings. I actually just love Jared, who uses a scythe at any chance he can rather than a mower for clearing grass. And then we've instituted a very robust waste management system to help us with our lowering our carbon footprint. We also just installed solar panels on the campus, this array, as well as a small solar carport. That will take care of about 25% of our energy needs. We also purchase all of our other renewable energy through our energy company. So we have a commitment to 100% renewables. And then just a few slides just in closing. For us, the permaculture site and the practice of permaculture offers great educational opportunities for us, mostly with young people from our high schools and our colleges in town. It also, again, these are just the vermicomposting bins. Again, a great educational opportunity. The students are the ones who learn from Jesse. He's the guy in the orange shirt. He actually has a whole business on vermicomposting, and he comes out and we've built two bins. We intend to build 1 to 2 more in the next year, because we'll be expanding that process to restaurants in the area who may want to also participate in some vermicomposting with us. One of the benefits of the permaculture site is also that our older sisters, all of whom, when they were not living in Adrian, had their own gardens, grew their own food. And so we have a whole section of the site that allows them to continue to enjoy being outdoors and to grow produce for their kitchens where they live, and for the common kitchen where they also eat. So we have what we call accessible beds for our older sisters in order to keep that enjoyment and that refreshing experience of working with Earth alive for them. These are just couple photos of our kitchen gardens that we grow with our berries and our other produce. We're not able to supply all of our food needs. We have over 200 women that live on campus, but we do each year we increase the amount of food that we are producing for our sisters. And finally, I think as a group of religious women, and it's very important to have beauty, to have aesthetics, to have a welcoming contemplative place. And I think that the efforts that we've made to live in harmony with nature, to live with nature, and alongside her as one of her beings and with others, I think has helped us to create a very welcoming and contemplative space. And finally, I would just end with one of my favorite quotes by Gandhi, which is, to forget how to dig the earth and to tend the soil is to forget ourselves. And so I just think it's wonderful that you all are doing this internship, because I think your engagement with earth is also an engagement with our spirit, with our very souls, as to who we are as humans. So I really congratulate you for your commitment to this program. So that's a little bit of what we do here in Adrian, how we implement the permaculture principles, how we're trying to live in harmony with earth. And I don't know if there's any questions you might have or something that you saw that you want to know more about. Let's see, we have.
Yikes.
Okay.
I just had about the principles you were talking about of permaculture design. Where do those come from?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Oh, you mentioned 12 principles of permaculture design. I was wondering where those originate from.
Oh, so they originated from in the 1970s. Bill Mollison and David Holmgren actually coined the term permaculture. That was in the mid 70s. Many of those practices, though, came actually from the indigenous people, the Aboriginal people in Australia, where they're from. So many of those practices actually have their roots far back in time, but the actual term permaculture was coined in the mid 70s by those two men. And then have been implemented by others over these decades. I'm looking to hear, is this Brendan, you were talking about the process of feeding the pigs? Yes, that's one of those cyclical processes of nature. That's great that you do that. Yeah. So do you enjoy vermicomposting?
So that was something that I did at a semester that all three of us did at different semesters. But yeah, it was like a sustainable, like it kind of used its own resources.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's fascinating that the way worms work in terms of they will populate based on how much they're fed, that their whole means of population is dependent on how much they are being given. And if they're being given less, they hold back. I just think that the instinctual life of the worm is rather fascinating in some ways.
Well, I just want to thank you for that. That was quite inspiring. I'd love to go up there and have you walk me through that. That's just amazing what you've done. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Herman. Thank you. Have any of you built rain gardens, or do you have them in your cities or on your campuses where you are? Okay.
At my school, something that they do is they design the roofs like strategically to capture rainfall. And actually over our health center, it has like it catches the water and it deposits into like a green roof garden sort of. So yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, at my my school's library, like above it, it's just this whole kind of rooftop of different gardens and weeds. And for my environmental science class, we actually would go up there and kind of like weed things out. And then we actually were doing a count on how much growth there was. And like made a bunch of graphs to see how the rooftop kind of like biodiversity was working.
Great. That's great. We've looked at our rooftops. Our rooftops are not really feasible just because they're built, like slanted for a green roof. But if we were to build new buildings, which we don't anticipate that's probably something we would have then, is for many reasons. For the insulate, it's a great insulation, cooling system, and warming system. And then also, again, just it's that whole use of what you have, the space you have, and how do you best use it. So at the permaculture, you went to a permaculture farm, right? A farm based on permaculture. What struck you from that place, other than probably a great meal?
I know I'm used to seeing food grown in either like local like community gardens or in like a farm format, and seeing, I don't want to say the hybrid, but seeing kind of a combination of the two, or the way that it was so carefully managed in its almost like lack of micromanaging, I thought was extremely interesting and fulfilling.
Hmm. Did they have, what I did not capture for you well, or speak about is, did they have areas that they would call like a food forest, or an edible food forest? We are just beginning that concept. Our vegetable gardens are very, they do grow together, but the food forest is more based upon fruit orchard trees and a top story, middle story, and a ground story. And so unfortunately, it takes years. Unfortunately, I say, I'm thinking to myself, maybe in another 10 years, I'll be able to fully enjoy the food forest area. But I find that to be a wonderful concept.
Mhm.
One of the things we've not been able to integrate well, and which is why we bring goats in more on a, once, twice, 3 times a year, is we don't have animals in our system. I don't know if you all do. Did the permaculture farm have animals on site?
Like medium to no, like obviously like she had a dog, but she is like fully vegan, so like the closest thing to like farm type animals she would have is honeybees, so we interacted with her with the honeybees.
Okay. Right.
I spent some time down at the Island School where Brendan and Nicole and Ava attended, and they had a pig in addition to all of the crops. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think Brendan wrote about it then in the, how many pigs did you all have?
For my semester, it was 2.
Okay.
We had like 3, but we watched one of them get killed and then we ate it.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the end
It's like,
part.
yeah.
You kind of like learn about where your food comes from. So they have like a harvest at the end of the semester.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the same cyclical type permaculture thing that they have there.
Mhm.
Okay.
Did you want to say something?
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say something in regard to your question about animals and kind of their role in permaculture. Something that she noted, I think her name was Katrina, the one that ran the farm. She talked about at one point how like a pack of bears or like a family of bears came in and actually like wiped out like all of her bees and a lot of her fruit. And it was just kind of interesting to get that perspective. Like, yeah, there are intentional animals within permaculture, but there's also the risk of having animals that aren't as intentionally integrated, and how that's actually something that's like they don't really try to avoid. They kind of, it seemed that she kind of saw it as an inevitability.
Embraced it.
Yeah, an inevitability, and kind of embraced it in that way.
Mhm. It's true. We have deer. We have a very large population of deer in our area, and they're adorable, except they're the ones that do come in and will destroy, the crops. So we sort of have a love-hate relationship with the deer. They're peaceful. We love seeing them. We don't permit hunting on our area, but probably, as the person at the permaculture farm, you sort of accept them for their presence, and sometimes their presence is not, we might not see it as beneficial as, one might like, but also they are part of this, the cycle. We've tried everything. We've actually planted a separate garden for the deer, thinking they would go there. But for some reason, they think that the garden we like to harvest from is tastier or something. So it's sort of a comical relationship. So I don't know if there's any other questions or thoughts or. You might have.
You go for it.
I just have one quick question for you. Could you comment on, like the influence of the Green Sisters? And if you're not familiar with them, just the influence of your own group on other religious communities?
Sure. So the Greens, there's a group called the Green Sisters. There's also a group called Sisters of Earth. I think that the religious sisters have over, I would say as far back as 1970, there has been a real engagement with living in closer and right relationship with Earth that has affected many of us and influenced many of us in our spirituality, in our decisions that we have made relative to the use of properties. It has, it's a return back to a way of being that is much more in harmony and a connection, a growing connection with Earth. I think for myself, my last 10 years, I know spiritually and, my whole spirit and mind has been shaped because of that deep connection with Earth. I think that there is something, and actually people write about this, there is something that happens when you're actually working on, with the soil on a daily basis and having those connections made. It affects, I think, other aspects of relationship. It affects how we might make decisions. I know that it also affects the whole sense of Earth law that is being studied. There's environmental law that we have in the United States, but environmental law is really still considers Earth, nature as object and not as subject, not as having its own place in the world, its own rights. And so many, one of our sisters that the Earth Law Center knows of, Pat Seaman, she greatly influenced me in understanding that Earth does have rights, water has rights, the soil has rights. And so Earth law, Earth jurisprudence is an area that many of our, I think there are many sisters that have gone into that area in different ways. Certainly as lawyers, but also when we speak about and when we advocate for what's happening in our political system, we advocate from an earth law perspective, not from an environmental law, not from it. We're trying to reshape environmental law really to earth law, to understanding nature as subject, not as object that can be used, consumed without thought. When one considers earth as subject, there's relationship that happens that is much more that's very deep and meaningful. So I don't know if that's kind of what you were getting at, but that's how I would address it a little bit.
Thank you. Yes, that is what I was getting at. And do you also allow visitors and overnight guests to come?
We are beginning to. Unfortunately, because much of our campus is what's called a skilled care facility for our older sisters. During COVID, we went into not a complete shutdown, but we were not able to have visitors on campus. So we are now just beginning to gradually open up for people to come. We do have people who come for day kind of tours and things like that, but we're getting to the point where we have a retreat and conference center where people can come and stay overnight, and we'll be beginning new programming for things. So we are still emerging from the COVID environment, mostly because we have many of our older, most vulnerable sisters on campus. So our protocols are directed towards them.
Well, thank you. If there's no more questions, I would just like to, if there is any more questions, can you guys just let me know? But if there's not, I just want to thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
It was Anthony did remind me that, yes, Sister Pat was the founder of the Earth Law Center. So I didn't know if people, I know you all, I didn't know if the students, the interns knew that, so.
They don't. Thanks for sharing.
No, she's a great friend of mine, and I owe a lot of my awakening to her friendship. She's an awesome person. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I hope you have a great rest of your week together and the continuation of the course. So it sounds very exciting. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.